Mm, mm, I'm Mrs. Mady Hole Zuma, Winston-Salem, North Carolina.
Somehow that got muted.
Here is here's an announcement from the YWCA camp, 1927. And Hall is actually the general secretary of the YWCA at the time. And one of the things I want to note is the fact that the first Black library here in Winston-Salem actually opened in the YWCA in February of 1927. That fact is not often stated, even within the history of the Forsyth County Library. Here we have a picture of Mady Hawk Uma in 1936 on one of her first visits back to the United States and Winston-Salem after living in Johannesburg. Now, the most significant thing about this particular image is that to contextualize it globally, she returns to the United States from Johannesburg for the first time since leaving in 1940. And of course, her home is here in Winston-Salem. And in the package that you have, I have a letter that she sends back to her husband, Dr. A.B. Fluma. And she talks about her house and how much she loved her house after they had just built the house. And you'll find that in the package of literature that you have. Also, during this period of time, Mady Hawk Uma, she is representing the Republic of South Africa at the United Nations. And also, we want to also continue during this period of time also, she, in addition to advocating for equal rights for South Africans, but also within the context relative, knowing that she herself within Jim Crow Winston-Salem, that there was a commonality between the people of Winston-Salem, the United States, and the people in South Africa. So there's a global context that we have here when you're looking at Mady Hall Nkrumah. Here we have a picture of Mady Hall on the front row. She's circled, and she is at the Zenzele YWCA in Benoi in 1953. This is a training workshop that they have to teach Black women to develop leadership skills that they needed to be successful in South Africa. And several of the members of the YWCA would go on to serve in the African National Congress, now the ruling party in South Africa today. Here's an article that you can see from the Greensboro Daily, 1955, and it says, Tar Heel with African Troubles. Essentially, and beside her is her husband, Dr. Alfred B. Nkrumah. This is his book. What they're talking about, they are fighting against apartheid in South Africa. And even though they were a part of the elite class, their home, they were to also be removed from the house that they had built in Sophiatown. And so Mady Hall started a campaign to not only save her own home in South Africa, but also to save other people's homes from being razed in South Africa during the time of, as apartheid was really starting to begin. The last slide that I have is, she mentions Creola Foote. Creola Foote was a lifelong friend of Mady Hall Nkrumah, and together they propelled the Black Garden Club movement in Winston-Salem and in the state of North Carolina. Mady Hall Nkrumah was elected the first president of the North Carolina Federation of Garden Clubs, and I actually have, so honored to have two members of the Federation, the president of the North Carolina Federation of Garden Clubs, Gloria Phoenix is here, but they were formed in 1935. The Along the Garden Path Garden Club was established here in Winston-Salem in 1931 by Mady Hall Nkrumah. Thank you.
Any questions for the applicant? Thank you for this wonderful presentation. Before receiving this information, I had no idea who she was, that she existed, and it's great to see that we had somebody representing Winston-Salem, Forsyth County, North Carolina, in multiple struggles across multiple continents, helping bring equality to everybody. So, thank you for this wonderful.
Yeah, and you know, I'd like to say that Mady Hall is probably one of the most unknown persons here in Winston-Salem. She graduated from Winston-Salem State University. It was, she graduated from Slater Industrial Academy. She graduated from Winston-Salem Teachers College. She taught here in Winston-Salem. And she is also the great aunt of Harvey and Harold Kennedy. She raised Harold Kennedy Sr. She mentions Harold Kennedy Sr. in the book, how she writes a letter back to her husband, A.B. Nkrumah, when he is in South Africa. She says, I think she was in Geneva at a YWCA meeting because she was on the board, the first African-American to be a part of the board of the YWCA International. And she writes a letter. She says that, I'm so sorry that I'm going to miss the graduation of my dear nephew. I'm talking about Harold Kennedy. He graduated from Howard University because she raised Harold Kennedy. And so Mr. Kennedy was very, very proud of her, to the point that when this book came out over 20 years ago, and the ambassador of South Africa, Sheila Sisulu, she came in on her own dime because they recognized the significance of both Mady Hall Nkrumah and A.B. Nkrumah. And now they are actually national icons in the Republic of South Africa. They're recognized in South Africa, but as we told the ambassador, they have not been necessarily recognized here in her own hometown.
knew Winston because she went to go metropolitan. I was a child, but for some reason, I was under the impression she was a missionary. I did not know the magnitude of her globalness, for lack of a better word. So this was definitely eye-opening and information that was just marvelous.
Any other comments, questions?
Can we see the marker chart?
And just for the record, Robert Leake arrived at 5:36 to join the committee.
Sorry, next up we have Brown Elementary School. Mr. Samuel Hunter is the applicant. So go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone from the HRC. Good afternoon, everyone in the public. Thank you for having me. My name is Samuel Hunter, and I will be presenting on Brown Elementary School here in Winston-Salem. Before I get into this, I would like to acknowledge some of the people that I got some oral history from. Mr. Emmanuel Mickens, Albert Porter Jr., Councilmember Annette Scipio, Sabrina Stowe, and Maddie Walker, who is joining us via Zoom. So thank you. So Brown Elementary School. Brown Elementary School is located here in Winston-Salem on the southeast corner of Highland Avenue and 12th Street. Is no longer there. If you drive by there now, you'll see some new apartments going up. But originally it was named Woodland Avenue Colored School. In 1910, the school system's enrollment spiked over 5,000 students, forcing the district to improve and expand some of its schools, which resulted in the construction of Woodland Avenue School. Under the direction of William Northup, they were able to construct the school a two-story classic revival style structure to accommodate the growing student body. Brown Elementary School, named after Robert Washington Brown. Born and raised in Winston-Salem, Principal Brown has been an influential figure in this community. With Dr. J.W. Jones and other Black leaders, he established, originally named Winston Industrial Insurance Company, now known as Winston Mutual Life Insurance Company. While still playing a part in Winston-Salem Mutual, he was focused on education and had a passion for education, which led him to become the principal of what was called Woodland Avenue School. While being the principal at Woodland Avenue School, he also took part in formulating the Safe Bus Company, which you all are familiar with as well. He stayed active in the school system until his death in 1941, and then after his death in 1941, Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools named the school after his passing. So what did the growth look like of Brown Elementary School? It housed a number of students and it continued to grow, so they had to expand even more. So the school underwent multiple expansions. In 1914, with the new principal, the school expanded and included a second building and had more rooms, more space, and for students and for faculty. And then they underwent some more expansions in 1919, 1921, and 1939 to accommodate the growth that it was still experiencing. So they included some kitchens, some multi-purpose rooms, and some extra bathrooms. And then, as we know, integration started to occur, and it was at the forefront of the school system, especially when they did the merger, and the school system had to undergo some more expansions. During the integration era, the school system made sure that they had an emphasis on unitary and non-discriminatory school systems. So making sure that the children could be exposed to things that they have never seen or experienced in their lives. And doing that, they started busing students out of their predominant districts. So they were sending students to different areas of Winston-Salem where they were not close to their school. They were interacting with students that they have never seen before. It was all new for them, and it was also new for the school system. And as we know, there were some challenges there. You can see a narrative here that was in the Winston-Salem Journal, And then also you can see some photos, people with picket signs discussing the integration and how they felt about that as well. In 1977, Brown Elementary held its last formal class at the site, and then it closed its doors for operating school. In the later years, it was purchased by St. Peter's Corporation and the Shiloh Baptist Church. They were able to use that as a daycare center and house some other church operations in that facility as well. It remained active until the late 2000s when the owner decided that the facility was no longer fit to accommodate their programs. In 2014, the Housing Authority of Winston-Salem purchased a property with the hopes of redeveloping the property for some affordable or senior housing. On December 20th, 2016, the school caught fire and burned down entirely. So you can see some photos here of what the fire looked like that night, and then also kind of the remnants of the school there as well. So what's it look like now? What's going on with the site? In 2020, Halls, in partnership with the city of Winston-Salem, was selected to receive the Choice Neighborhood Initiative grant from Housing and Urban Development. In spring 2023 of this year, vertical construction has started of 81 new mixed income units. And you can see in the upper right of the screen, that's what the development looks like right now. Actually, if you were to ride out there tomorrow or even tonight, you would see there's brick on these buildings, all the siding's coming up, and we are hoping to have these fully leased by early spring of next year. To honor the heritage of the school, it's going to be named Brown School Lofts at Legacy Heights. So that's what's going on right now. That's the end of my presentation, at least on the slide, but I will say that this school played a significant role in the African-American heritage in Winston-Salem. A lot of people grew up and went to Brown Elementary School, had some very fond memories of this school, and it played a large part in them coming up, interacting with their friends, and even their parents taking them to school, walking into school. It was something that they looked forward to every day. When the school ceased operations, it was detrimental to some people, but they stayed hopeful, and then they attended other schools in Winston-Salem. Brown Elementary School was one of the most modern Black-only elementary schools in the school system at that time as well. So it holds a significance to a lot of the community.
Thank you, Mr. Funner. Any questions for the applicant? Those of you who are on the commission should be familiar with this site. We did a section 106 review for the site, if I'm remembering correctly.
That is correct.
So we should have some familiarity with it already.
So what happened after 77?
Yeah, so it was purchased by St. Peter's Corporation and the Shiloh Baptist Church, and they were able to use the school as their operation aside from the church. They hosted daycares, after-school programs, and other things like that.
I'm really confused because I went to school there,
Okay.
but it was in 82 or 3. It was Brown Intermediate.
Okay, I didn't read that one.
Yeah, so I'm confused, or just blocked it out of my mind, or bad experience or something.
Okay.
But yeah, that's when you were talking about busing.
Yeah.
So I came here from Clemens to Brown for 5th and 6th, and went back to Clemens to Southwest for 7th, and back to Kennedy for 8th, and back to West.
Gotcha.
When I went to 4 years. So I saw this, and this looks awful familiar, but it was way after 77. So I was just curious.
Okay.
Don't know. Maybe I'm thinking of something wrong.
Gotcha. Yeah, I read up on it was 1977 when they had the last formal class. So.
And the little blue rectangle right in the middle, that's where you could go under the street. It's a little tunnel that goes under across the street, because the field, it was a little playground ball field across on the other side of the road there.
Gotcha.
They had a bread store, and I remember people giving us honey buns, and I remember that one.
Gotcha.
I remember that.
Where were you when we were doing the section 106 review and I requested archaeology be included as criterion D? Because that would have been an important.
But I remember coming in on the front side. This was the bus lot on the bottom. So maybe I'm telling you wrong. I don't know.
I mean, if you went there, you got to know. Yeah.
And I remember when it caught on fire, because I teach at Career Center right across the street. And so, yeah, we took a field trip, we were gonna watch them. Put the fire out, we were kind of slow down.
It's a career,
True.
right?
Thank you, Mr. Hunter, for your time, your presentation.
Yeah,
your
thank you.
presentation. I love learning about it's unfortunate we've lost this building, but good work with,
Yep.
I do appreciate you naming the new neighborhood after the building as
Yeah.
a way to try to recognize that. So,
Absolutely.
thank you.
I have a comment. I just want to say thank you for giving us this history. My mother also attended Brown Elementary School, and she also stated to me some stories in regards to the tunnel. Of course, our family's from Louisville, and she stated that she was bused from Louisville to Brown Elementary School. And then as I began to learn my family history, as ministry runs in our family, I also remember hearing the story of St. Peter's World Outreach Center. And I do know Councilwoman that Scipio is in the audience. So I do remember hearing that St. Peter's, the church was it under the ground?
It was just the base.
The basement, okay, the basement, okay. Okay, so with that said, it really has enlightened me on the history of this, just this community itself. And the significant part of it to me was that the additions that were added on to the buildings, it showed that there was school growth. It's still sad today to see that we are still in a place within our school system that we're still dealing with segregation in Winston-Salem South County schools, and that we're still having issues in regards to the busing. But with that said, thank you for the presentation. It was very enlightening, and I know now what to go back and talk to my aunts and cousins about. But I also want to say as well, thank you for including Brown Elementary School in the redevelopment phase of the choice neighborhoods. A lot of times in our Black and brown communities, we find that there is history there, but the history is not told because there's no one there to tell it to the next generation. And so this has really played a significant cornerstone, I believe, would this be considered East Winston?
Oh, yes.
Okay, East Winston area, in East Winston area, in regards to the Brown Elementary School and what type of impact it has had on the former students, like of my colleague to my right. So thank you for that, I appreciate it.
Thank you. Need the text?
Can I see the wording again?
Yeah, we'll put that up on the doc cam. You wanna slide it?
And while we have a chance to tabulate our votes, just for those of you who are not familiar, Section 106 refers to Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act. Anytime a project receives federal funding that might impact natural or cultural resources, it activates Section 106. There are 4 criteria that play into that. My favorite is criterion D, but I'm a bit biased in that favoritism because of my past as an archaeologist, but just so y'all know, when we say Section 106, that's what we're referring to.
Can I just make a point? Maybe it ceased to be an elementary school, or did you go to middle school there?
Well, I remember it being an intermediate, I guess, they didn't know really what to call it.
Right, because they went to this, whatever, 5-2-2-2-2 plan.
Yeah.
So I think, because I was not there then, but I went to Kennedy, and my neighbor taught at Brown, so I used to go to Brown in the afternoons and wait on her for a ride home. So I think maybe it ceased to be an elementary school, so that probably might be the clarification that's needed for that.
Yeah, Councilmember Scipio is confirming it operated until 1984 as a school.
Okay.
So I'm sure if that's what
I
you're
think that's what
saying,
happened. 'Cause
it changed, and then
Mhm.
Samuel, I think you
Yeah, 77 was an elementary school.
Oh, the elementary.
Yeah.
You said the church bought it in 86.
Yes.
So, and then in 1986, it was purchased by the church daycare.
So would you change the wording on the
Yeah.
marker?
Yes, yes.
So it transitioned from elementary to a middle school.
for an intermediate.
Oh,
Yeah,
intermediate.
there were like four, we went to 4 different schools during that time for some reason. So, yeah.
Some high schools for 2 years.
Right.
They,
It wasn't the
was
same
recently when they went to 4
format.
years.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, so just for clarification, that next to last sentence would say the school remained in operation until 1986?
84.
80 till 1984.
I think I asked the same question like last year probably, but how do these texts get finalized? What's that process again?
So staff, the markers that are selected, we look at it, we go in detail through the application and other information we have. I usually do a little additional research to confirm dates, names, et cetera, are all correct. Then when we have a text, a proposed text, we'll have the applicant review it and confirm that as far as they're concerned, it's correct, that they're good with it, then it comes to the commission. So it gets developed somewhat from what's proposed, but, we obviously want to know what the important facts are that an applicant wants included. Right.
All right, our next applicant is for the Rogers House. You are not Mr. Spear.
I'm the other one.
Austin.
Yeah, Austin Hayes is presenting for the applicant, so go ahead, Mr. Hayes.
Sure. So we really wanted to highlight the family that lived in this house. It's a very prominent home in the area, but I don't know that the history of the entire family is well known. So after moving into what is now Winston-Salem in 1880, James Mitchell Rogers quickly established himself as an astute businessman and served not only as the president of the Brown, Rogers and Company hardware business for over 40 years, but also served as the first president of the Winston-Salem Chamber of Commerce.
If you want to advance, just use the right.
There we go. That's everything I just said. Right there. And then additionally, the house was the boyhood and retirement home of James Mitchell Rogers' son, Dr. Francis Rogers. He was a chief chemist for the Standard Oil Company of Indiana and a pioneer in developing methods for refining gasoline from crude oil. So here, this was the original Brown Rogers hardware store. It ended up growing, and it took over the corner of 4th and Main Street across from the courthouse. Then they opened the second floor for an opera house, and that was alive and moving for many years until there was first it went to the singers, actors, there were some orchestras. It was used a lot for entertainment, and then the YWCA took over, and then it burned. The hardware store became so big that they ended up having to have a second entrance on 5th Street. That's a photo of it there. So here, this is the application for historic designation. And it repeats a lot of the information I just said. So we're going to move to this. Rogers played other important roles in the community as well. At First Presbyterian Church, he served for 40 years, ruling elder. and in both life and death, much of his wealth was channeled into philanthropic efforts. Francis M. Rogers, as the chief Standard Oil Company of Indiana, worked with a small team of research chemists to develop processes for crackling heavy oil into gasoline through the use of high temperature and pressure. This process had a major impact on the American petroleum industry. And then the mother, Mary Irwin Rogers, was also active in the community. When the Twin City Hospital Association was formed in 1887, she was elected secretary. And when the Associated Charities of Winston-Salem was organized in 1905, she served as the third vice president. Mrs. Rogers played a large role in strengthening the religious life of the womanhood of First Presbyterian Church. And here is where I cited this from. And then this last part shows how many people drive by and walk by this landmark or this historic home. So highly visible. And then the last one is the location. Right here on the sidewalk of Cherry Street.
Put up for them the text.
Does anybody have any questions or comments for Mr. Hayes? Thank you, Mr. Hayes. Well, for the last couple months.
Yeah.
So, we appreciate your applicant for this and trying to bring some more recognition to the house and all the work y'all have been doing out there.
Sure.
So, it's a wonderful little house you'll have, and glad that we can get some recognition so people can recognize more what that house is and what it's about.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. And the next applicant is for Happy Hill Cemetery, and Maurice Johnson will be presenting.
Her grandson.
Sorry, her grandson. I knew there was somebody on here that did not match.
Brian Bonner.
Do you want the clicker or you want to just use the arrow?
Thank you.
Make sure it's going to work for you.
All right. Good afternoon. I'm Brian Bonner, and I'm honored to present Happy Hill Cemetery on behalf of my grandmother, Maurice Pitts Johnson. For years, she has been caring for the cemetery, and I'm doing research for her to help identify descendants. Currently, I'm working with Martha Hartley at Old Salem and discovering more history. The Happy Hill Cemetery is a significant historic and sacred part of Happy Hill, Winston-Salem's first African-American neighborhood. On the hillside above Salem Creek, freedmen started a school in 1867, and 5 years later began buying property and establishing homes for their families. Happy Hill also attracted residents from nearby counties. By the 1880s, the growing community began organizing churches and established the cemetery. Today, Happy Hill is a 2-acre tract on the hilltop at the east end of Willow Street. Its origins are in 5 lots deeded to the Methodist Episcopal Church and Liberia Baptist Church between 1886 and 1895. An archival graveyard association document recorded a designed cemetery. The east-west orientation included a central avenue, family plots, and 2 large sections reserved for children. The location is speculated according to existing headstones. With time, the graveyard expanded east, north, and west as the neighborhood grew steadily. By 1920, there were about 130 families in Happy Hill, where over half owned their own homes. Many worked in tobacco factories, furniture manufacturing, lumber yards, and at Salem College. Still, others farmed, were day laborers, barbers, drivers, domestic workers, and more. Okay. Happy Hill Cemetery interments included members of Happy Hill's founding families and later residents, as well as people from other neighborhoods. Death certificates and other sources recorded nearly 1,500 burials from the 1890s to around 1970. The cemetery's history is directly tied to the history of the neighborhood, which has suffered from a century of negative impacts. Major changes came to Happy Hill in the 1950s when 14 blocks of the neighborhood were torn down for construction of the city's first public housing project, Happy Hill Gardens. Oral history recorded grave removal at the cemetery edges during site preparation for the adjacent apartments. The apartments helped house hundreds of African-American families who lost their homes in East Winston to new highways, including US Highway 52, which directly impacted Happy Hill Cemetery. In 1966, approximately 200 graves were removed from the east end of the cemetery for Highway 52 and reinterred in Walkertown. Neighborhood health declined and the sacred ground was lost in tangles. A request for help cleaning in 2007 unfortunately resulted in heavy machinery damage to grave markers and land. Sensitive cleaning was launched in 2010 and continues today. Rising Ebenezer Baptist Church is a partner in maintenance. This past summer, the Happy Hill Neighborhood Association led further vegetation removal, and in recent weeks, Oddfellow Cemetery crews have revealed more burial ground. A 1948 aerial shows row after row of graves in a landscape with evergreen trees, outlined family plots, and walking paths. Approximately 115 visible grave markers have been mapped. However, there are hundreds of unmarked burials and many broken markers. Generations of people are buried there, including members of my family. I remember going over to my grandmother's house as a boy and admiring all the old pictures she had. My grandmother's grandparents, Columbus Christopher Pitts and his wife, Alice Simmons Pitts, stood out to me, particularly because my grandmother had a wealth of knowledge about them. They were early settlers of Happy Hill, and Pitt Street is named for the family. A few years ago, I found out that my great-great-grandmother, Alice Simmons Pitts, had an original gravestone, which was broken, because someone posted a picture of it on Find a Grave. I could not locate it, so I knew that it was probably underneath the plants and fallen branches covering many of the graves. A recent cleanup made significant progress, so I decided to try again to locate Alice's stone. By chance, I happened to walk straight to her grave. It was a very fulfilling moment because I almost felt like my ancestors were leading me to that place. It validated for me that what I'm doing right now is very important. My hope for the future is that I can find other descendants of the deceased in Happy Hill to help with the upkeep of this historical site. A historic marker for Happy Hill Cemetery will raise public awareness to help connect with descendants. Recognition will encourage cemetery preservation and contribute to Happy Hill neighborhood pride. Thank you.
Thank you for that wonderful presentation. Any comments, questions from the committee?
That was powerful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I grew up here and I did not know it was there until I read it.
Oh, yeah.
I knew about Happy Hill, when we visited Happy Hill, but I had no idea there was a cemetery.
Yeah, we visit from time to time.
I mean, I just, it's not, but it's just amazing.
Yeah. It's in pretty bad shape.
You've done all this work to preserve it, and thank you
You're
for
welcome.
your efforts.
Yeah, I had the privilege of visiting the cemetery a couple of years ago with a tour with Cheryl Harry, and it was a really unique experience getting to visit there, and your story about your own personal connection and finding your ancestors' grave is just, it's one of the reasons we do what we do. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Thank you.
I'd like to say that I do remember the story of Happy Hill Cemetery. Some of my family members actually lived in the former Happy Hill community. They're not buried there now that I know of, but thank you for enlightening us on this history. But I do want to say to this committee that I do think that, you know, these these residents in the community, Happy Hill, and the committee members, they have worked tireless to clean this cemetery up for years. I remember serving on Winston-Salem beautiful board of directors, and they were talking about trying to partner together to do a community cleanup. But I do want to say thank you to Ms. Martha. I see her right there in the audience, and for your tireless work. And I think I forgot your name, the one that's sitting beside Councilwoman Scipio. But I saw you before. Yes, you. Tanya, I knew it was Tanya. Okay, yes, ma'am. Thank you so much as well for what you've contributed to the community. But just to hear and see that you actually found your ancestors' grave, that's powerful. So it also shows us, there could be some more graves out there.
There are.
I know, yeah, exactly. So, but I'm proud to see that there is some type of sign there now that says Happy Hill Cemetery. I've not been in the community yet to see that, but thank you, Ms. Martha, for your contribution to this cause. It's not unnoted at all. So thank you to your grandmother, Ms. Marguerite Johnson. She and I used to work together years ago. So
I'll tell her.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
I don't want to say anything I didn't want to say, but I do want to say it's very impressive to have you present this. Your grandmother would be very, very proud of you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's nice to see a younger generation stepping up, because that's what we need. So I just commend you. And again, your grandmother would be so proud. Oh, I'm so sorry she's not here, because she's an amazing woman too. But she's got a smile on her face right now.
Absolutely.
We are recording, so you can see how well she hears. For those of you who don't know, there is an ongoing cleanup effort here and at Oddfellows. Plenty of volunteer opportunities, so watch the media for a chance to go out and work for a day. It's a really wonderful way to give back to the community. It's something Michelle and I have both had the pleasure of doing, so.
And let me just clarify something. Your grandmother and I used to work on volunteer with Human Relations Commission, so we was not working together. I'm a young man, so yes, ma'am, but I want to clarify that. Thank you. Thank you so much.
And while Heather gets the marker text up, I do have a question for Martha that you may or may not be able to answer. Has there been, or are there plans to do any remote sensing of the cemetery?
Well, as noted in our application, archaeological examination is critical, not only for the perimeter areas that may have been impacted.
Do you want to come speak so everybody can hear you?
Okay. Thank you for your question, Chairman. Yes, a part of the process with the Happy Hill Neighborhood Association is some strategic planning to bring in archaeological examination. Certainly geophysics, ground penetrating radar, electromagnetic induction, marking the graves. There are 1,500 recorded, 200 have been moved. And also we need to have archaeological eyes on the ground. So yes, thank you for that question.
Thank you. Absolutely. Yeah, just personal curiosity.
Y'all have some hard work to do.
As soon as Spencer gets back, we will,
Go to the next.
all right. Next up is the Delta Sigma chapter of Phi Beta Sigma fraternity. Daniel Crudup, I hope I pronounced that correctly, is presenting for the applicant, and I love y'all's jackets and ties.
Thank you. Yes, that is correct, Daniel Crudup. And I am, again, Daniel Crudup, and thank you guys so much for your time this evening. I serve as the president of the Delta Sigma chapter here in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and I am joined by...
My name is Christopher Hinton. I'm the vice president of our chapter, as well as our international executive deputy chief of staff for our entire organization.
And we also have some other members of the chapter here this evening. We have Honorable Brother Darrell Pratt Sr., Notable Brother Reginald McCaskill, and Brother Antonio McCoy. And again, today we are here to speak about an organization, Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated, and why we believe that historic marker is beneficial for our organization.
So I'm a storyteller. I feel like there is power in telling stories, right? So if you can imagine, almost 110 years ago in exactly 2 months, on January 9th, 1914, 3 men came together at Howard University to found what I believe is the greatest fraternal brotherhood there is. If it wasn't, I would not be a part of it, right? So then, less than 10 years after our founding, here in the city of Winston-Salem, 5 individuals who are all proud individuals of not just Winston-Salem community, not just members of Phi Beta Sigma, but upstanding men came together and said, why don't we bring this international organization to the city of Winston-Salem, making it the second oldest alumni chapter within North Carolina. And now in about 2 weeks, right, Brother President, we will be celebrating our centennial year with a bunch of things that signify the work that we've done and we will continue to do to impact the city of Winston-Salem, North Carolina.
So as you guys know, Winston-Salem became a incorporation in 1913. So imagine in 1913, and you have an organization founded by collegiate gentlemen formed in 1914. And then here in 1923 in Winston-Salem, you have a group of 5 proficient men come together to create this organization here in Winston-Salem. We have Dr. William Henry Bruce, Dr. Ashley Cromwell, Dr. Rufus Hairston, Dr. Don Henry, and Dr. Cicero Neely. And these were not just, anybody in the community. These were prominent men. They were the first of many. I like to say Phi Beta Sigma, we're not the first fraternity, but we are the first of many things. We were the first to establish alumni chapters of the Divine Nine. We were the first to establish auxiliary group with our Sigma Beta Club. We were the first to establish international chapters. We were the first to establish a credit union for our members. And so we were the first and the only of the Divine Nine to be constitutionally bound to another organization, which is Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated. So no, we're not the oldest, but we are the first of many things. And so a lot of our charter brothers were also the first. We have Dr. Bruce, who owned and operated commercial property on Patterson Avenue, which housed his pharmacy, but it also housed a lot of other businesses for African Americans. And he also had a passion for real estate, and he was responsible and helped build 144 homes in African American neighborhoods, while also helping African Americans finance their homes. Dr. Cromwell, he operated his own dentistry practice here in the city. And in 1932, he served as the choir director at Golo Metropolitan AME Zion Church. And he something that he introduced is still going on today, and that is the 7 last words of Christ that they perform every Christmas. Dr. Hairston, he was Winston-Salem's first African-American pharmacist. He was the president of the National Pharmaceutical Association, and he was one of the first alumni board members at Winston-Salem State University. He owned and operated his own drugstore, model pharmacy, Harrison Drugs, and he and his wife, Mary Harrison, donated over $1 million to their alma mater, Winston-Salem State University. In fact, they have a building on campus named after them. And Dr. Henry was one of the first African-American doctors in Winston-Salem as well. And he also owned and operated family practices and was a general surgeon. Dr. Neely also was an early African-American pharmacist here in Winston-Salem. And he and Dr. Harrison had a drugstore. And once Brother Neely passed, Dr. Harrison became the sole owner of that drugstore here in Winston-Salem.
So as I mentioned earlier, Delta Sigma, the Delta Sigma chapter, Phi Beta Sigma, is the second oldest alumni chapter of Phi Beta Sigma in the state of North Carolina. But just like our brother President Crudup said, we are the fraternity, we may not be the first fraternity, but we are the fraternity of first. So we are the first alumni chapter, graduate chapter to be chartered within the city of Winston-Salem of the Divine Nine Degrees, correct? Mm-hmm. Right. So with any fraternal brotherhood, we always are founded on principles like brotherhood, right? So outside of just being founded on brotherhood, we also are very big advocates for things like scholarship and things like service because we are a collegiate brotherhood. So we have four national programs, three being pillars, things like bigger and better business, supporting African American and minority businesses. We have one of our members that is currently in our chapter and who is currently seated in this room, the notable brother Reginald McCaskill, who is the founder of the Triad Minority and Women's Business Expo, which is a huge exposition that has been nationally recognized as one of the best minority and women's business expositions in the country. Outside of bigger and better business, we have programs like education that foster not just education for our brothers, but also education throughout our entire city and throughout our entire community. We do things like giving back to schools. We volunteer in different schools around the city, including North Forsyth High School, Griffith Elementary School, and at East Forsyth Middle School as well. Social Action is our program based on making sure that we are advocating for not just our own people, but advocating for all people and making sure that our nation is equitable for all individuals, no matter what their identity, race, creed, color, or identities may be. And finally, as Brother President said earlier, we were the first organization amongst the D9 constellation to found a youth auxiliary group known as the Sigma Beta Club. Funny story about myself, I am a product of the Sigma Beta Club. I was a product of the Sigma Beta Club in Winston-Salem, born and bred here in our city. And if it wasn't for the Delta Sigma chapter and the opportunities they afforded me as a middle school student throughout my entire high school career and my undergraduate career, I would not be the man that's standing before you today.
And also going back to education, we do believe that education is important, especially for our young men and our minorities and for everyone really. But one thing that we've done, one project that we did take this year was the Stair Step project, which was done by Brother McCoy, Antonio McCoy. So if you go around in high schools and look at the stairwells at North Forsyth, at Reagan High School, at Harvard High School, you will see in their stairwells, they have the names of colleges. Every college they're listed there. So every day there's something that they see, the names of these colleges. And we challenge the educators and people to go visit these schools and take a picture on your stair where you went to college and show that college is an attainable goal for people. So that's something that's powerful. We want to show the power of education and have them see that every day, because their vision, if you see it, then you can believe it and you can do it. I'm looking at Delta Sigma today. We have over 100 financial and active members here in the city of Winston-Salem. And that is something that is a testament of what we do every single day. Some of the activities that we do is Black Spend. We believe that Black Spend is an important thing. Black Spend, keeping the money in African-American, or being patrons of African-American owned businesses and minority businesses and spending money and financially helping others is how we track the dollars spent by the chapter and by individual chapter members at their businesses. As we shared We also believe in doing scholarships. Each year we have the Dale Prince Scholarship. To date, we've raised over $20,000 have been awarded to the scholarship to African-American boys and minority boys who have graduated high school and attending college. So we do believe in the power of giving back financially. And we also talk about literacy, the importance of reading and how literacy is an important thing. And so we have programs, we do programs via Zoom, we do programs in person, but we're all about doing things to help. March of Dimes is one of our major projects every year. We were recognized as the top contributor to March of Dimes last year. We raised over $8,000 and provided to the March of Dimes for March of Babies.
So with social action, as I mentioned earlier, it's about how do we advocate and how do we support identities around the community, not just how do we uplift our own, but how do we uplift everyone in Winston-Salem regardless of who they are. So we do things both virtually and in person to make sure that we are going with this principle of our great organization. Every year, the chapter partners with my own philanthropic foundation, the Hinton Foundation, and we feed 100 families for the Christmas holiday, providing entire Christmas meals as well as toys for children who are less fortunate and who are marginalized. We do things to support minority mental health awareness. As we know, in the minority and the marginalized communities, mental health is not something that's seen at the forefront. And because of that, we do things to make sure that we understand that if we cannot take care of ourselves, we can't take care of other people. The chapter raises thousands of dollars for March of Dimes, as Brother President said, and not just in the city of Winston-Salem, but our entire organization has been spotlighted for our efforts with the March of Dimes, being that it is one of our national partnerships. And finally, we have a collegiate chapter at Winston-Salem State University known as the Delta Alpha chapter, and they do the Sleep Out for the Homeless. If you guys are free on this coming Friday, this is a shameless plug. While I have the audience, I might as well do it. So we have the Sleep Out for the Homeless, and it's been going on since the 1990s, where for 12 hours, we go out on the third Friday of November every year, and we raise awareness, we raise canned goods, money for individuals who are homeless within the Winston-Salem community. So if you guys are free at 7 p.m. on Friday, we will be hosting this event on the campus of Winston-Salem State at the Clock Tower. Beyond that, we also have chapters. We will be chartering a chapter at Wake Forest University next year. We were approved for that in October of this year, so be on the lookout for more innovative programming from the Sigmas of Winston-Salem by way of Wake Forest University.
And I guess in closing, just to let you know that for over 100 years, the Delta Sigma chapter of Phi Beta Sigma fraternity has engaged with the community, helped it grow, and has grown along with the city. We humbly request a historic marker be placed on the northwest corner of 3rd and Liberty. We have a connection to 3rd Street since many of charter members, I'm sorry, that's incorrect. It should be 3rd and Church. We have a connection to 3rd Street since many of charter members were business owners to the business on East 3rd Street. And also because the original Phi Beta Sigma house was located on this street as early as 1922.
Thank you all for that wonderful presentation, and appreciate learning the history of your fraternity and all the great work you all have done to help support the city and the community. Does anybody on the commission or the committee have any questions or comments for the applicants?
No questions, but congratulations to you as you celebrate the centennial as a member of a historically Black organization, also known as Alpha Alpha Sorority Incorporated. What you've done in this community is remarkable and far too long has gone unnoticed. And so this definitely is a way to commemorate all of that. And I congratulate you.
And one more
Another thing, a lot of people don't realize that the Divine Nine have the alumni chapters. Most people associate fraternities and sororities as college organizations. And that is what differentiates us from that, because of the alumni chapters that work in the community. So again, congratulations.
And on behalf of the Hinton, or the Crudup and Hinton administration, we hope to see Phi Omega at our Centennial Gala in 3 weeks.
I'll be there.
As we will be at yours next year.
As we will be at you guys' next year.
Again, it's so exciting to see the youth involved. Very exciting.
The one thing to comment about the proposed location for this marker, many of you probably know that that block was sort of the downtown business, black business district, that was taken by urban renewal, and then the Phillips building was built on that site. So recognizing, you know, the history of that area and its importance to the black community downtown would be a significant thing.
All right, and for our final applicant tonight, we have Winston Lakes Golf Course. And Mr. Sherrod, I believe, is presenting for that.
Yes. Winston, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
You're not muted.
I want to text him or call him.
And we do appreciate all of y'all's patience sitting through some of these technical difficulties. Technology is great. It allows us to reach well beyond our borders and bring in outside experts and get new perspectives, but sometimes it doesn't want to cooperate.
And he's all the way in San Jose, California, so.
Yes.
Oh, are you there, Winston?
We're trying to talk to you. Yes, I can hear her talking, but can she hear me?
Yep, you are. Yeah, now we can. You are.
He's gonna talk, and if we don't hear you, I'll call back.
Okay.
All right, Winston, I think we are ready for you to start presenting if you would want to talk. And what we're looking at right now is a photograph of the entrance off New Walkertown Road.
Right. Good afternoon and good evening to you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I
Yes.
said good. Yes, okay, then I only say it good evening because we're talking about a 3-hour time difference. I'm here in San Jose, California, which is, of course, in the heart of the Silicon Valley. And also, most people don't know, but it is the 10th largest city in the United States. My name is Winston Sherrod. And of course, live here in San Jose, but my home is in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And that's my real home. I'm coming to you because I feel because Winston-Salem is what I consider to be the crown jewel, if you will, the hidden crown jewel that resides here in the Triad area. And there are so many things that this city has offered me through a lifetime of living and also serving in some capacity here in Winston-Salem. Just to give you a brief background on myself, I did graduate from Atkins High School in 1963, and from there went on to Virginia Union University in Richmond, Virginia, and then went on from there to play a couple of years of professional football with the Boston, now New England Patriots. I wanted to talk a little bit about Winston Lake and the golf course. Because Winston-Salem has always been a very progressive city, not only for its communities, but also for especially the Black community. At this particular time in Winston-Salem's history, we're now beginning to see the expansion of the Winston Lake Park. And just adjacent to that park is also the golf course. And the golf course, of course, has been around since 1953, and then 1956, it was expanded to 18 holes. It is, as I see, a financial base that will benefit not only the community in the East Ward, but also the surrounding communities in the beloved city of Winston-Salem. My experience, of course, has given me an opportunity to work for the city of Winston-Salem within the Redevelopment Commission when it was first moving people from East Winston and substandard housing into standard housing. And that was an experience for me after playing football. And of course, another experience for me was also taking up the game of golf, which I do have a passion for, and sometimes more passion for it than football. So I come to you this evening to let you know how I feel about Winston Lake Golf Course, how I feel about the community that I grew up in, and I'm hoping that we can come together as a city and make this a historical place, not only for us as a city, but for others that come and visit the city, that come and play golf in the city of Winston-Salem. It's a very unique situation to have a golf course that was basically set forth for Blacks in the East Winston district. And my times have changed, as we all know, because now this golf course consumes all people of all races and nationalities. And that's a great thing. The even better thing, in my mind, is the fact that it has one of the better, if not the best, first tee programs. And if you aren't familiar with the first tee program in golf, which was founded by Joe Barrow, who is the son-in-law, or I should say not son-in-law, but son of Joe Louis, the boxer. And the first tee program reaches to the heart and soul of each and every one of us, especially when we talk about children, when we talk about young people that are growing up and are beginning to get started on their journeys in life. The First Tee program gives them more than just golf. It gives them a foundation for going out into the world and being successful. So I come to you again this evening to ask for the support of you, the HRC, and to be a part of the expansion of a legacy that's part of this city. And if there's anything that we can do as a city can be, I think, a very boon to the economy of Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Thank you for listening to me. And if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to try and answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Sherrod. What's your average par on this course? Because from what I understand, it's not a very easy course to play.
No, it's not. And that's the beauty of golf, in my opinion, to have courses like the lake, which is actually another hidden little clue, if you will, about Winston-Salem, because yes, you're right. There are people that really are afraid to play Winston Lake. And that's okay. But if you want to sharpen your golf skills and you want to understand how to have accuracy off the tee, because when you are at Winston Lake, you feel as though you are surrounded by nothing but a forest. So you can't afford to be inaccurate. You should be trying to keep your ball in play all the time. And that's the beauty of Winston Lake. Just one of the things that I feel has an appeal, especially to golfers that have a high IQ.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Does anybody else on the committee have any questions or comments for the applicant?
Mr. Sherrod, I know you can't see me, or I don't think you can see me. Okay. But I met you several years ago. My name is Alana Meltzer Holderfield, and I was working at a museum that was then called New Winston Museum, and we talked about your efforts to commemorate the historical significance of the golf course, and I just think it's great how far you've come since then, and I've gotten to learn a lot about the golf course in that time and the cultural and historical importance it has to many people in the community, so I'm just happy to see it on here, and thank you for your presentation.
Mr. Sherrod, I'm Annette Wilson, and my brother's house sits right behind one of the, I think it's a nice hole, and I grew up not too far from there on the Walkertown Road. And so having grown up in Winston Lake as a whole, but particularly the golf course was something we took great pride in because of not only the fact that it was a recreational venue, but it was also the site where many impressive golfers gathered during my younger age. So this truly is as you quoted, a hidden gem for our community. And it is a beautiful golf course that provides recreational outlet, but also a gathering place for a lot of people.
Thank you. And I think the more that we can do to enhance that area, and certainly the city now is beginning to do that with the park, et cetera, and the dredging of, and having somewhat of a waterfront. And I've been informed, if you will, that there may be condominiums or townhouses that might be built in and around Winston Lake. The vision again is good. So,
Mr. Sherrod, you can't see her, but Councilmember Scipio is here and shaking her head to that. To the condos, I believe.
And I'll also, while we're going up, score sheets, I'll also remind commission members that we have seen Winston Lake very recently in their National Register nomination form. So it's another property we should be familiar with. We're getting some recognition out there some way, somehow. Hopefully, yeah.
So it hasn't been listed yet, but we should find out. We're hoping late December, early January, it should be listed. We can see you now. Well, I can see you now.
Thank you.
But now I can't hear you.
Thank you, Mr. Sherrod. If you're still on Zoom, wonderful application, wonderful presentation. Appreciate learning about the golf course. Yeah, just another great year of applicants. And I believe Councilwoman Scipio wanted to speak to the committee before we adjourned.
Yeah.
Thank you for these, just a few comments I'd like to make. This is an amazing afternoon for the East Ward. 6 of these applications are properties or sites in the East Ward. It is wonderful that community members are beginning to understand that our history as African Americans in Winston-Salem is of value, and it should be documented and celebrated. I didn't want to say anything about any of them because all of them are wonderful parts of our history. I'm old enough to remember Mrs. Maddie Hall Zuma. I'm like Ms. Wilson. She was shown to us as a missionary. We knew her as that lady who came. She's a missionary. So isn't it amazing that people will learn more about what she did outside? And we just didn't know that. But to be able to say, oh, I saw her, I knew who she was, that was important. Brown School. I had a friend who died a couple of years ago. She was 102 when she died, but I met her when she was 90, and we talked. And the thing she shared with me was Brown School, because she grew up on Highland Avenue. And she says, oh yes, you went to school and you opened that door and you were greeted by Professor Brown. Everybody called him Professor Brown. I said, ooh, that was interesting. Because you never thought of an elementary school principal being called professor. But she says that's how they were trained and taught, and what a wonderful experience that was for her. Happy Hill finally getting some recognition. A community that was the very first African-American neighborhood platted and sold by the Moravian Church for African-Americans to buy homes. It was for home ownership. But it also has another bit of history that I hope you'll be hearing more about this year. Martha, is that date 1831? Is that the right year for the liberation? 1831? 36. I had 31 in my head. 1836. Do you know the very first liberation, emancipation of slaves happened in Happy Hill? 1836. 17 slaves were freed, and their transportation and expenses were paid for them to go and live in the nation of Liberia, which was established for freed Africans, slaves, and African Americans. Right here in Winston-Salem, the first liberation of enslaved people. What a wonderful history. I want you to think about that. But it happened here, Happy Hill. Lots of things happened there. Also the destruction of a community by 52. Even when 52 came through, it actually took some of those graves that were in Happy Hill Cemetery. We'll never get those back. They were just plowed over, plowed up. Phi Beta Sigma, the men are gone. I knew Dr. Cromwell, I knew Dr. Bruce. One of the joys of my life was to go to Rufus Harrison's drugstore and have the soda guy do what they know as floats, Coke and ice cream. But they were always the cute boys. So I'm sorry, I always loved to go down there to Rufus Harrison, and I did know Mr. Neely. And Winston Lake Golf Course, it's in my backyard, and it's a jewel for our city. It has survived because it wasn't built on a landfill. The topography is a challenge. It's very hilly, lots of woods, but what a jewel that it has survived. Our city was quite progressive for African American life and living because of jobs. And Winston Steam Laundry. What a phenomenal space. That's in the East Ward. It's where people went to work. They walked. Some young people probably don't know this, but people actually took their clothes and sheets and everything to the laundry. And that was a big deal for people. Lifestyles have changed now, but I just want to say I'm so happy we have so many applications this year around African American history in our life. And I certainly hope we'll have more. I don't envy the job you have tonight because you've heard some real outstanding applications. All of them were outstanding and represent people. So I'm going to say this to the commission. I think you need to change your standards and have more than 2 each year. I think you need to think about, because our city's gotten older, and we have neighborhoods, we have people who need to be recognized, and we have a larger population. So I think you're going to have more and more requests. So I would like to encourage you to think about increasing the number, and if the council has to approve that, I will be your advocate to make sure, because I think you need that, but I have a couple of people, we can just try to push that through, because we have a city that's really rich in history, and it's beyond Old Salem. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. It is always a pleasure to see you at these meetings, and I think I speak for the committee, the commission, and definitely for myself at how appreciative I am that we have such a supportive city council, and that y'all are in such regular attendance to our meetings, and we really appreciate the support and words you offer every time you visit. We thank you very much. Any other comments? Anything else you want to add to the record before we adjourn? Thank you all for your attendance tonight. It was a great meeting. As to echo the councilwoman's words, we do have a really tough job. I have no idea which way this is going to go. So we will see what happens when Michelle and Heather do their math.
Yes, just committee members, please make sure you complete your scoring sheets and turn them in to me before you leave tonight.
And with that, we are adjourned.